Well, joining us now for a conversation here on the program, let's get another agronomic update and talk with our friends at AgriGold. Agronomist for AgriGold in Kentucky, Josh Johnston, is with us here on the show. Josh, it is good to talk with you again, sir. Hope all is well.
Well, Jesse, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I look forward to our chats. So it's always a lot of fun.
I'd love to hear a quick update on how the crops are looking in your area as we watch the Mid-South, Kentucky. We're getting into the home stretch here. How have things been looking throughout the growing season?
Well, as you know, it's been pretty wet. And as of recently, it's started to turn dry. It's been a difficult year. We basically have three different corn crops growing out there. April planted corn crop that is almost there. Like we are so close to reaching black layer on that. It's looking phenomenal. It's looked great all year. Then we have a sort of a middle May crop out there. It's average to better. It took a tremendous amount of water. There's some holes. I don't think it's going to be quite as consistent as the April corn. And then we have a June corn crop. Yes, believe it or not, we have a tremendous amount of corn planted in June. And let me tell you, that stuff has looked beautiful since the day the seed went into the ground. It hadn't stopped growing. It is so even and so consistent. But we're getting to peak water demand on that stuff. It's just now starting to pollinate. So we're going to need several more rains to make that crop reach full potential. But right now, fingers crossed, looking fantastic.
Well, good to hear. Good to hear. We'll see what happens as we get this crop across the finish line. I know, though, too, what I really want to talk to you about today is obviously we watch the crops grow throughout the season, but you as an agronomist and the AgriGold team, you guys do a lot of research year in and year out. Tell us a little bit about the Learning Hub field trials, Josh. What exactly is going on here?
Yeah, so every agronomist has sort of been assigned the task of doing a learning hub, which is basically a plot in which we can do some training at. And different people are testing and studying different things. But my focus, really, there's four main things in my learning hub. Two of which, we spend a lot of time talking about. Actually, Jesse, today was day one through the learning hub. We'll be there every morning, each day this week. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So there's four main things. Number one, in Kentucky, we have a horrible time of converting plants to ears. That problem has taken place early in the season, somewhere around that V5 time frame. So we're picking up these seedling blights, and that's damaging the plants. They continue to grow and look fine, but they're barren or they make a runt ear. So a big portion of my learning hub is seed treatment trials. I think I can mask those shortcomings with seed treatment. Obviously, we have our top 8 hybrids. So when a grower comes to the learning hub, they can get a really quick visual of exactly what our top performers, our top sellers are, so they can see, okay, and get an idea when it comes buying time, these are the products that my salesman is probably going to be selling. So that's two things out of the Learning Hub, but that's just like a quick 10-minute stop on each of those categories. Where we've been spending the bulk of our time is in the Field GX section and the Earflex demonstration. So if we have time, I would love to explain what we're trying to accomplish with both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us some details on both of those because I think a lot of growers would be very interested to learn more here, Josh.
Absolutely. So this concept of Field GX is, I'm going to be arrogant and brag just a little bit, but it's a concept that you're only going to hear in the AgriGold camp. So we have this thing called our Field GX, basically, which means our genetics in your fields. And we assign those a letter. And it can be confusing on the onset. Like, so one might be a Field GXF or a Field GXG. Behind the scenes, these are actually terms that breeders would use, except they use words that we don't understand, Jesse. They'll say Missouri 17s or Ohio 43s or Lancasters. Breeders are familiar with those terms, but nobody else on the planet knows what those terms actually mean. So we rephrase those terms to a letter. And the best way to explain that to somebody is if you think about people and how people look across the world, right? We're all people. We all have a functioning brain and a heartbeat. But when you get into these different cultures and different parts of the world, a human being can look drastically different in one part of the world versus another part of the world, right? They can look way different. Corn is the same way. The genetic backgrounds are vastly different and they respond to things very different. So it's so important, like when we talk about diversifying, a lot of people think, well, if I buy from this company and I buy from that company and I buy from that company, I'm really diversifying my lineup and I'm putting myself in a position to be more successful. That might be true, but more than likely that's not very true. The best way to diversify what you have growing out in the field is to stick with us and plant, spread your maturity risk like everybody does, but then plant some of these different genetic families. The reason that's important is because they're all going to behave different in a year-over-year basis. Some of these families love cool, wet seasons. Some of them thrive in the hot, dry seasons, and there are various from the different spectrums of the year. So, for example, like last year, family 8, what we call family H, were the top. The year before that, what was the genetic family Fs rose to the top. So the story is every year is going to be slightly different. And if you're spreading your risk out across these different genetic families, you're going to put yourself in a position to be more successful, right? We can't look into the crystal ball and see what the next year is going to be and pick out the perfect genetic family or the perfect hybrid. We just can't do that. So spread your risk, plant a whole bunch of these different genetic families. And at the Learning Hub, we do a really good job of making that strategy come to life, and that's been really fun. The second thing would be something also fairly unique to AgriGold. A lot of times in the industry, we talk about ear flex, but we use terms like, well, this one's fixed, or this one is a determinate, or it's semi-determinate. But at the grower level, those words aren't specific enough. So at AgriGold, we try to take that one step further and tell you exactly how each one of your hybrids, how their ear is going to flex. So for example, it might be flex in girth. Very simple, right? Or it might flex in overall length. Or it might not do either of those. It might flex its kernel. And you might say, Jesse, well, that's not very important to me. But, oh, yes, it is. Because your management strategy has to cater to each one of those styles of flex. So let's walk through those real quickly, and I'll show you why that's important. Yeah. So if you have a hybrid that determines most of its yield or its flexing style is a girth hybrid, the obvious question then becomes, well, when does a hybrid determine its girth? And that is early in the season. Somewhere around V5, all your kernels around are already set. So if you have a hybrid that's flexing in girth and it's getting its yield from how big around that ear is, you better make for doggone sure that hybrid at V5 feels like it's sitting on the beach drinking a pina colada. And that is really difficult. Like if you think about how the seasons are at V5, a lot of times we're sitting in cool, wet conditions. You can't have that if you're a flexure in girth. All right, length is a very similar strategy or a unique strategy in and of itself. Length is determined over a really long period of time. So somewhere between V10 up to like V14, 15, 16, that's where you're determining how long the ear is going to be. So when you're trying to manage an ear length hybrid, really population is the name of the game. You want that to be as thick as it possibly can to create that long of an ear, but not go too high. If you overpopulate a hybrid that flexes in length, you're going to be very disappointed because those style hybrids don't like to be planted on the thick side. So for example, A lot of it's a little bit of a trial and error, or trust your agronomist that does the research. Like at 32,000, you might achieve maximum population, and then at 35,000, well, that was a little too thick. You blew the end of the kernels off. So the other thing is, if we know it's doing that from V10 to V14, that's when we need to really focus our management decisions and trying to make that plant feel good there. The final is girth, or kernel flex. I'm sorry. And kernel flex is very interesting because these hybrids do all of their work at the very end of the season. And I'm talking very end of the season. So would you believe that in some scenarios, a hybrid that flexes in kernel size, even 3 days of premature death can mean a 12% reduction in yield? And I've done that research over and over and over and over. So when you're dealing with a hybrid like 64516 in our lineup, it gets all of its yield out of kernel feel. That means you have to focus all your time and attention on the end of this corn plant's life, and you have to make sure that it lives a full life all the way to the very end, because every day at the end you're adding bushels, and you're adding bushels at a really high content there to the end.
Great perspective on that. And I think as we kind of wrap this all up here, Josh, and in summation, I think the work you guys are doing at AgriGold, all the different hybrids that are out there in the lineup, the fact that we know that every field is different, even on the same operation, it can be different across the road. I think that's why it's important. And you can talk about this for us, about placing several different hybrids across your acres, across your operation, et cetera, using these tools that are in the toolbox like you guys have at AgriGold, right, Josh?
Oh, it's so important. Yeah. I mean, once you understand the Field GX approach to placing your hybrids, and then you pair that with how each one of those specifically will flex its ear, man, you really put yourself in a position to win, and win big.
And I know if folks want to learn more about Field GX and take a look at all the different products you guys have, especially as they start making decisions for 2026, I'm sure going online, contacting their local dealer, representative, et cetera, a lot of ways to get in touch and get more information, right, Josh?
Absolutely. They could call me too if they want to. I'm always accessible.
That's what makes a good agronomist. I know folks can go to agrigold.com for more information. Josh Johnston, AgriGold agronomist in Kentucky. Always good to chat with you, my friend. Thanks for joining us here on the show today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.